Martha gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. The GPS indicated 3 miles left to the address she'd avoided for 8 years. 8 exact years since the last time she'd spoken that name out loud. Since she'd decided that forgetting was easier than remembering. The road wound through live oak trees draped with Spanish moss, and the afternoon sun hit the windshield with an intensity that reminded her why she'd sworn never to return to Savannah. Every curve brought her closer to the historic district house, that property that now legally belonged to her through bureaucratic paperwork she didn't fully understand. A house she needed to sell, fast, without looking back. The notary had been clear over the phone. "Ms. Martha, the property is in your name according to the will. No one has claimed it. It's been abandoned for years. I suggest you come sign the papers and put the property on the market as soon as possible. Historic houses in the downtown area sell well to foreign tourists." Foreign tourists. As if the house were just that. Square footage, brick walls, a slate roof. As if it didn't hold anything more than dust and humidity. Martha entered the city as sunset painted the facades in impossible colors. Savannah was still beautiful, she hated to admit it. The cobblestone streets, the wrought iron balconies, the smell of magnolias and sweet tea wafting through open windows. Everything remained the same. Unbearably the same. She parked in front of the house and stayed inside the car for 10 full minutes, staring at the carved wooden door, the thick walls of red brick, the second-floor window where a silhouette used to appear at dawn. "I'm just here to sign, to sell, to close this once and for all." She repeated those words like a mantra as she took out the rusted key the notary had sent by courier. An old, heavy key that seemed to have been forged in another century. When she held it in her hand, she felt it weighed more than it should, as if it carried something more than metal. Subscribe now. YouTube prioritizes subscribers, and those who aren't subscribed miss out on future stories. The door creaked open, and Martha was hit by a smell she didn't expect. Dried jasmine, old wood, and something else. Something she couldn't name but recognized immediately in some deep place in her memory. That specific smell that places where we were happy and didn't know how to value it, have. The interior was shrouded in shadows. She walked slowly, her footsteps echoing on the terracotta tile floor. The windows were closed, covered with heavy curtains that blocked the light. There was furniture covered with white sheets, like motionless ghosts waiting to be discovered. She forced herself to open the windows one by one. The afternoon light flooded in, illuminating the dust floating in the air like millions of particles suspended in time. The main living room was exactly as she remembered. The green velvet sofa, the coffee table with carved legs, the bookshelf that occupied an entire wall. The same books, the same photographs in silver frames, the same dried plants in ceramic pots. Martha approached the bookshelf, and her eyes stopped on a photograph that was face down. She knew exactly which photograph it was. She knew why it was face down. She extended her hand, hesitated, withdrew it. No. She hadn't come to remember. She had come to close. She climbed the stairs to the second floor. Each step groaned under her weight, as if the house were protesting her presence, or as if it were welcoming her. She didn't know which of the two options disturbed her more. The second-floor hallway had 3 doors. The one at the end was the master bedroom. Martha turned the knob, feeling her heart beat too fast. The door opened and the air seemed to leave her lungs in one blow. The bed was still there, made, with the same ivory sheets, the same pillows, as if someone were going to return that night to sleep in it. On the nightstand there was a glass with evaporated water, an open book on a marked page, and reading glasses. Martha felt the walls closing in on her. She left the room breathing with difficulty, and went down the stairs almost running. She needed air. She needed to get out of there. She needed... "Excuse me?" The voice stopped her cold. Martha spun around abruptly. In the doorway stood a girl. She would be about 11 or 12 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a long braid, almond-shaped eyes that looked at her with uncomfortable intensity, and a school backpack hanging from one shoulder. "Who are you?" asked Martha, with more brusqueness than she intended. Her heart was still racing. The girl entered without asking permission. She walked toward the center of the living room, with a familiarity that made Martha's skin crawl. "My mom used to say this is where it all began," said the girl, looking around with curious but confident eyes, as if she'd been there 1,000 times in her thoughts. Martha felt the floor move beneath her feet. "Your mom. Who is your mom?" The girl looked at her with an impossible-to-decipher expression. There was something in her eyes. Something Martha didn't want to recognize, but was already recognizing unwillingly. A familiar gesture. A tilt of the head she knew too well. "Her name was Eleanor Hayes," said the girl with a clear, direct voice. "She died a 1.5 years ago. And this was her house." The name fell into the silence like a stone into a deep well. Eleanor. Eleanor Hayes. The name Martha hadn't spoken in 8 years. The name she'd locked in a mental drawer with a padlock and key. The name that now vibrated in the air of that living room as if it had never left. Martha had to lean on the back of the sofa. Her legs were trembling. "She died?" was all she could say, and her voice sounded strange, distant, as if it came from someone else. "Pancreatic cancer," the girl responded with disturbing calm for her age. It was quick, 6 months from diagnosis, but she left everything arranged. Papers, will, everything. Martha couldn't process the words. Eleanor was dead. Eleanor had been sick, had suffered, had died, and she didn't know. She hadn't been there. She hadn't said goodbye. She hadn't. "And you are?" "Her daughter," the girl completed. "My name is Sophie. Sophie Hayes Wilson. My dad was James Wilson. But he also died when I was 5 years old. Car accident. Since then, it was just Mom and me." Sophie walked toward the bookshelf and ran her fingers over the spines of the books as if greeting them. Martha watched her, unable to move, unable to speak, trying to fit all the pieces of information that were falling on her like an avalanche. "Mom talked a lot about this house," Sophie continued. "She said the best years of her life had been here, that she'd been happy in a way she never was again. She told me stories about afternoons in the courtyard, nights reading in the living room, sunrises from the second-floor window." Martha closed her eyes. She could see every image Sophie described, because she'd been there. She'd been part of those afternoons, those nights, those sunrises. "But she never told me who had been here with her," Sophie added, and now her voice had an edge of curiosity. "She always spoke in plural. We read, we cooked, we talked. But she never mentioned a name. She never said who that other person was who made this house special." The silence that followed was dense, loaded with unasked questions and answers Martha wasn't ready to give. "Why are you here?" Martha finally asked, evading the implicit question. "Because Mom made me promise something before she died," said Sophie, and for the first time her voice wavered slightly. "She made me promise I'd come to this house, that I'd look for something. She gave me very specific instructions." "What thing?" Sophie approached an antique piece of furniture in the corner of the living room. A dark wood desk with multiple small drawers. Martha had seen it 1,000 times but had never opened it. It was Eleanor's desk, her private space, and Martha had always respected that privacy even when they lived together. The girl opened the third drawer on the left. She put her hand all the way to the back and, with an expert movement, pressed something, A click was heard. A secret compartment slid out. Inside was a book. A brown leather diary with worn corners and a red ribbon as a bookmark. Sophie took it out carefully, as if it were something sacred. She held it in her hands for a moment, looking at it with a mixture of reverence and fear. Then she looked up at Martha. "Mom said that when I found this, I'd know the whole truth, and that then I'd understand why things were the way they were." Martha felt she couldn't breathe. She knew that diary. She'd seen it in Eleanor's hands during the 3 years they'd lived together. Eleanor wrote in it every night, sitting in bed in her white nightgown, her reading glasses on the tip of her nose, concentrated on capturing thoughts she never shared aloud. "It's my way of processing the world," she told her once, "of understanding what I feel. Maybe someday someone will read it and understand who I really was." Sophie slowly opened the diary. The first page had a date, March 15th, 2009, almost 15 years ago. Martha did quick math. It was exactly 1 month before they met. The girl began to read aloud, and her childish voice contrasted disturbingly with the adult words loaded with emotion. "Today I met someone who looked at me in a way I hadn't experienced before. It wasn't a casual look. It wasn't courtesy. It was recognition. As if her eyes told me, 'I've been waiting for you.' It terrifies and excites me at the same time. I don't know her name yet. I only know that something changed in me when our gazes crossed at the Forsyth Park Farmers Market." Martha felt tears threatening to come out, but held them back forcefully. That day. She remembered that day with painful clarity. The crowded farmers market at Forsyth Park, the suffocating heat, the smell of fresh peaches and fried food. And Eleanor, standing in front of a textile stand, with a purple shawl in her hands, turning just as Martha passed, their eyes meeting. The world stopping for 3 complete seconds. "Was it you?" asked Sophie, closing the diary but keeping a finger between the pages as a bookmark. "Are you the person Mom wrote about all these years?" Martha didn't respond. She couldn't. The words were stuck in her throat along with 8 years of silence, guilt, regret, and unresolved love. Sophie observed her with those too perceptive eyes for her age. Then she reopened the diary and continued reading, this time silently, slowly turning pages, while her eyes scanned the lines written in Eleanor's slanted handwriting. Martha watched her, not knowing what to do. Part of her wanted to snatch the diary from her hands, run out of that house and never return. Another part of her, deeper and more honest, wanted to hear every word Eleanor had written, wanted to know what she'd thought, what she'd felt, how she'd processed everything they lived together. The sun was setting, and the golden afternoon light entered through the windows, illuminating the dust that still floated in the air. The house was silent except for the occasional sound of diary pages being turned. Finally, Sophie looked up. There were tears in her eyes, but she wasn't crying. Her expression was one of deep understanding, the kind that only comes after all the pieces of a puzzle fall into place. "So you weren't just a visitor?" she said quietly, almost a whisper. "You were her love." Martha went out to the back courtyard without saying a word. She needed air. She needed space. She needed those 4 words to stop echoing in her head. You were her love. The courtyard was small but intimate, surrounded by high walls covered with purple wisteria that had grown wild over the years of neglect. In the center was a gray stone fountain that no longer worked, filled with dry leaves and accumulated dirt. 2 rusted wrought iron chairs flanked a round table where they used to have breakfast on Sundays. Martha dropped into one of the chairs. The metal was cold, despite the day's heat. She closed her eyes and let the memories invade her. Those memories she'd kept at bay for 8 years with iron discipline. Eleanor laughing while trying to cook grits for the first time. Eleanor with her hands full of cornmeal, her apron stained, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. "How is it possible that it's so complicated? My grandmother made them with her eyes closed." And Martha behind her, hugging her by the waist, kissing her neck. "Your grandmother had 50 years of practice, love. You've had 50 minutes. Eleanor reading on the sofa with her bare feet propped on Martha's legs. The comfortable silence of two people who don't need to fill every moment with words. The occasional brush of Eleanor's fingers on Martha's arm. Distracted, automatic, like breathing. Eleanor dancing alone in the kitchen to the rhythm of a Patsy Cline song coming from the old radio. Spinning with her arms extended, laughing at her own clumsiness. Pulling Martha to dance with her. "I don't know how to dance," Martha protested. "It doesn't matter," Eleanor responded. "Me neither, but I feel happy, and I want to dance with the person I love. Is that too much to ask? I can leave if you want to be alone." Martha opened her eyes. Sophie was in the doorway connecting the house with the courtyard, still with the diary in her hands. The afternoon light illuminated her profile, and for a moment, Martha saw Eleanor in that young face. The same high cheekbones, the same tilt of the head when being considerate. "No," said Martha, surprising herself. "Don't go." Sophie walked toward the other chair and sat down. She placed the diary on the table carefully, as if it were something fragile that could break with a rough movement. "How long did you live together?" asked Sophie, with a voice that was curious but not invasive. 3 years, Martha responded after a pause. From 2009 to 2012. "And what happened?" Martha laughed without humor, a harsh laugh that hurt coming out. "Life happened, reality happened, fear happened." Sophie waited in silence. She was good at waiting, Martha noticed. She didn't pressure. She just gave space for the words to come when they were ready. "Your mom was married when we met," Martha began, the words coming out slowly as if each one weighed. "To your dad, James. They'd been married 3 years. You were only 2 years old." Sophie nodded slowly, processing. "But she wasn't happy," Martha continued. "She told me from the beginning that she'd married for the wrong reasons, family pressure, social expectations, because it was what you did. But she'd never felt what she was supposed to feel." "Until she met you?" Martha nodded. "It was gradual. We became friends first. I'd just moved to Savannah for work. I was an architect. They'd hired me to restore historic buildings in the downtown area. Eleanor was a literature professor at SCAD. We met at the Forsyth Park Farmers Market on a Saturday morning. I was buying textiles to decorate my apartment. She was looking for ingredients to make peach cobbler." Martha smiled slightly, remembering. "We literally collided. I was looking at an embroidered blanket and didn't see where I was walking. I tripped over her and almost knocked over her shopping basket. I apologized 1,000 times. She laughed. She had a laugh that made everything else stop mattering. And you started seeing each other," said Sophie. It wasn't a question. "As friends at first? Coffee on Tuesdays after her classes, visits to antique markets on Saturdays, walks through the historic district while I explained the architectural details of the buildings. It was innocent. Or so we told ourselves." Martha opened her eyes and looked directly at Sophie. But it wasn't innocent. We were falling in love and we both knew it. And we were both too scared to admit it. The wind moved the wisteria, and some petals fell on the table like purple confetti. "What changed?" asked Sophie. "Your dad's accident," Martha responded softly. "James died in January 2009. Eleanor was devastated, not from losing the love of her life, she confessed to me later, but from guilt. Guilt for not having loved him as he deserved. Guilt for having felt relieved when he died because it meant she was free. guilt for those terrible thoughts that haunted her. Sophie listened attentively, her eyes fixed on Martha. I was with her during that process. I accompanied her to the funeral. I helped her with the paperwork. I stayed with her at night when she couldn't sleep. And one day, 3 months after the accident, we were sitting exactly here, in this courtyard. Eleanor was crying, not for James, but for everything. For the life she hadn't lived, for the lost time, for the fear of never being who she really was. Martha touched the rough surface of the table, remembering. I hugged her. She lifted her face toward me, and we kissed. It wasn't planned. It wasn't thought out. It just happened. As if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if we'd been waiting for that exact moment our whole lives. If this doesn't deserve a like, I don't know what does. And after everything changed, Eleanor asked me to move in here, to this house, to live together. It was risky. Savannah is a small city in many ways. People talk. But we decided we didn't care, that we were going to live our lives the way we wanted. Martha stood and walked toward the fountain. She ran her fingers over the stone edge. Those were the 3 happiest years of my life, she said with a broken voice. This house became our refuge, our world. Eleanor kept teaching classes. I kept working on my restoration projects. But this house was ours. Here we could be ourselves without apologies, without masks. She turned toward Sophie. Your mom was incredible, you know? She was intelligent, funny, passionate. She could talk for hours about Southern literature. She knew every Emily Dickinson poem by heart. She made terrible coffee but insisted on making it every morning. She loved sleeping late on Sundays and watching old black and white movies. She hated onions but ate them because I liked them. She was terrible at dancing but did it anyway because it made her happy. Tears finally fell down Martha's cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. And I loved her. God, how I loved her. In a way I didn't know it was possible to love someone. Eleanor wasn't just my partner. She was my best friend, my confidant, my home. Sophie had stood up and was standing next to Martha. She didn't touch her, but her presence was a kind of silent comfort. Then why did you leave? She asked with genuine confusion. If you were so happy, if you loved each other so much, why did it end? Martha wiped the tears with the back of her hand. Because of you, she said simply. Sophie took a step back, as if the words had physically hit her. Because of me? Not the way you think. Martha hurried to clarify. Eleanor loved you more than anything in the world. She talked about you constantly. Every achievement of yours, every new word you said, every drawing you made. You were her absolute priority. Martha returned to the chair and dropped heavily. But as time passed, Eleanor started worrying about how our relationship would affect you. You were 5 years old when we lived here. You were starting to ask questions. Why does Martha live with us? Why do Mommy and Martha sleep in the same bed? Is Martha my other mommy? Sophie sat down again, her expression now more somber. Eleanor was afraid, Martha continued. Afraid that at school they'd bully you if they found out your mom was with a woman. Afraid that her family, which was already complicated with her, would reject her completely and take you away from your cousins, your uncles, your grandparents. Afraid that when you grew up you'd blame us for making you different, for complicating your life. But that wasn't... I know, Martha interrupted. Now I know many of those fears were unfounded, that they were based on her own trauma, on stories she'd heard, on the weight of living in a place where being different was still a reason for rejection. But at that moment, those fears were real to her, and they grew every day. The sky had darkened. The first stars were beginning to appear. "We started fighting," said Martha. "Not big, explosive fights. Silent, corrosive fights. I told her she was exaggerating, that everything would be fine. She told me I didn't understand what it was to be a mother, that she couldn't ask me to risk your happiness for ours. I argued that you deserved to see your mom happy, that you deserved to grow up seeing real love. She said you deserved to grow up without carrying the stigma of having a different family." Martha paused, remembering those painful conversations that repeated again and again, each time more exhausting. The tension kept growing for months, until one night, after a particularly exhausting fight, Eleanor told me we needed to separate, that she couldn't continue with our relationship if it meant putting you at risk, that she loved you too much to be selfish. And what did you say? I told her she was making a mistake, that the love we felt wasn't selfishness, it was the most valuable thing we had, that we'd find a way to protect you without having to destroy what was ours. But she'd already made her decision. Martha looked toward the illuminated windows of the house. She asked me to leave. She said if I stayed, she wouldn't have the strength to do what she believed was right. So I left. I packed my things that same night. I left this house, left Savannah, left my job. I went to Charleston and tried to build a new life. Did you talk again? Martha shook her head. Eleanor called me a few times the first months. I didn't answer. I was too hurt, too angry. I felt she'd chosen between us, and had chosen fear instead of our love. Over time, she stopped calling. I changed my number. I blocked her social media. I did everything possible to forget. But you couldn't, observed Sophie. No, admitted Martha. I couldn't. For 8 years, I've tried to move on. I've had other relationships. None worked, because none was her. None was this. She made a broad gesture that encompassed the house, the courtyard, everything. This place, these memories, what we felt. None of that disappeared just because I left. I was angry with Eleanor for years, but I also understood her. She was a mother. She was trying to protect you in the only way she knew how. Sophie had been listening in silence, processing everything. Now she spoke with a small but firm voice. Mom never had another partner after you left. Martha looked at her. I always assumed it was because she was still processing Dad's death, Sophie continued, or because she was too busy raising me alone. But now I understand it was because she never stopped loving you. The words floated in the night air. There were things that didn't fit, said Sophie, her voice gaining intensity. This house she never wanted to sell even though we needed the money. The trips we made to Savannah every year in March, always in March. The way she'd stare out hotel windows, as if she were looking for something, or someone. Sophie took the diary from the table. And this diary, Mom wrote in it every night. When I asked her once what she wrote, she told me, letters to someone who can no longer read them. I thought she meant my dad, but it was you, right? Martha didn't trust her voice to respond, so she just nodded. Sophie opened the diary to a page marked with a folded corner. This entry is from last year, 2 months before they diagnosed her with cancer. She began to read. Sophie is 12 years old now, the age when we start questioning everything our parents told us. The age when we form our own opinions about the world. I look at her and see a girl who's braver than I was at her age, more open, more ready to accept the world's complexity. I wonder what she'd think if she knew the truth, if she knew that the person I loved most in my life was a woman, that the decision I made to push her away was to protect her, Sophie, but that maybe it was the wrong decision, that maybe I robbed her of the opportunity to grow up seeing real love, true love, for fear that that love would make her different. I've wasted 8 years. 8 years in which we could have been happy. 8 years in which Sophie could have had 2 people who loved her instead of one exhausted mother trying to be enough for 2. I don't know if Martha would forgive me. I don't know if she'd want to come back. So many years have passed. She's probably moved on. She's probably found someone who's not a coward like me. But if I could talk to her one more time, I'd tell her I made a mistake. That choosing fear over love is always a mistake. That I regret every day we spent apart. That I never stopped loving her. Not a single day of these 8 years. Sophie closed the diary. Tears were running down her face. She was going to look for you, she said. When she found out about the diagnosis, the first thing she said was, I need to find Martha. But by then she was too sick. Pancreatic cancer is aggressive. She didn't have time. Martha was crying openly now. Sobs that shook her entire body. In her last days, when she could barely speak, she kept repeating your name, said Sophie, also crying. Martha. Tell Martha. Find Martha. I didn't understand. I thought she was delirious. But now I know she was trying to tell me to look for you. To tell you the truth. Martha stood up and Sophie did too. They met in the middle of the courtyard and Martha did something she hadn't planned. She hugged Sophie. She hugged Eleanor's daughter. This girl who carried so many secrets of a mother who was no longer there. And Sophie hugged her back. Hard. As if she also needed that contact. That connection with someone who had loved her mother the way she deserved to be loved. They stayed like that for a long time, as night fell completely over Savannah, and the city's lights began to shine in the distance. 2 people connected by love for a woman who was no longer there, but whose presence still filled every corner of that historic house. When they finally separated, Sophie extended the diary toward Martha. Mom wanted you to read it. That's why she left it here. That's why she gave me such specific instructions to find it. She left it for you. Martha took the diary with trembling hands. She held it against her chest, feeling the weight of all the unspoken words, all the lost days, all the love that had been waiting to be acknowledged. I don't know if I can, she whispered. You don't have to read it all now, said Sophie with a maturity that seemed way beyond her 12 years. But I think you should read it, eventually. Mom spent years writing to you. It would be a shame if you never knew. Martha nodded, unable to form words. I have to go, said Sophie, looking at her phone. My aunt is waiting for me. I live with her now, since Mom died. Will you come back? Asked Martha, surprising herself with the question. Sophie smiled. It was a sad but genuine smile. Yes, if you want me to come back. I want, said Martha. Please come back. Sophie nodded and walked toward the exit. At the threshold, she stopped and turned around. Martha, she called, for you to know, I would have been okay if you'd stayed together. I would have been okay having 2 moms. In fact, I think it would have been better that way. Mom would have been happier. And I would have learned that love has many forms, not just one. And with those words, Sophie left, leaving Martha alone in the house with Eleanor's diary in her hands and the weight of 8 years of lost time pressing against her chest. Martha didn't sleep that night. She sat on the green velvet sofa with Eleanor's diary in her lap, a floor lamp as the only illumination in the dark living room. The shadows danced on the walls while outside Savannah slept, oblivious to the emotional earthquake shaking a woman in a historic downtown house. She opened the diary with trembling hands. The first page, the one Sophie had read aloud, was there. March 15th, 2009. Today I met someone who looked at me in a way I hadn't experienced before. Martha ran her fingers over Eleanor's slanted handwriting. She could imagine her writing this, sitting in this same living room, processing that first encounter that would change everything. She continued reading. I don't understand what happened at the market today. I was buying peaches for cobbler when a woman bumped into me. She apologized 1,000 times, embarrassed, with that Charleston accent that gave away she wasn't from here. Short hair, strong hands, honey-colored eyes that looked at me with an intensity that took my breath away. James is home with Sophie. I should be thinking about my family. Instead, I can't stop thinking about that stranger, about how her hands trembled as she picked up my groceries from the ground, about how she smiled when I told her it was nothing, about how she stood there, as if she wanted to say something more but didn't know what. She gave me her card. Architect. Her name is Martha Brennan, works in historic building restoration. In case you ever need help with this old house, she said, pointing at the address on my market bag. These structures require specialized maintenance. I don't need help with the house, but I kept her card, and that should scare me more than it does. Martha closed her eyes, remembering. She'd been so obvious, using the excuse of architectural restoration, so transparent in her desire to see again that woman who'd left her breathless in the middle of a crowded market. She turned several pages. The following entries documented their casual encounters: the Tuesday coffee, the walk through the historic district, the visit to the Telfair Museum. Each entry showed Eleanor struggling with herself, questioning these feelings that grew like vines, impossible to control. May 2nd, 2009. Today, Martha explained to me for 2 hours the architectural details of the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, the vaults, the arches, the stained glass. She spoke with such passion that she could have been speaking another language, and I'd still be fascinated. I didn't hear half of what she said. I could only look at her hands as she pointed out the details. Her hands that gesture when she talks. Her hands that brushed mine when she showed me a photo on her phone. James asked me where I'd been all afternoon. I told him at a literature conference. He looked at me with that expression he has lately, that mix of suspicion and resignation. He didn't say anything. I think he prefers not to know. What am I doing? I have a 2-year-old daughter. I have a husband who loves me in his way. I have a respectable, predictable, safe life. Why then do I feel more alive in those 2 hours with Martha than in the last 3 years of my marriage? Martha felt a stab in her chest. She hadn't known at that moment how much Eleanor struggled internally, how much it tormented her to feel something that society, her family, her own Catholic upbringing had taught her to reject. She kept reading, page after page. The entries became more intense, more desperate. Eleanor documenting every time they saw each other, every conversation, every accidental touch that lasted a second longer than necessary. And then she reached the entry from January 10th, 2010, the day of James's accident. I can't write much. The words refuse to come out. James died this morning. Accident on the highway to Atlanta. A freight truck. Instantaneous, they told me. He didn't suffer. Sophie doesn't understand. She asks where Daddy is. I tell her he had to go on a trip. How do you explain death to a 3-year-old girl? My family is here. James's family is here. Everyone crying. Everyone consoling each other. And I feel like a fraud. Because the first thing I thought when they gave me the news wasn't I lost my husband. It was, now I'm free. What kind of monster thinks that? What kind of person feels relief when her daughter's father just died? I called Martha. She came immediately. She's the only one who's looked at me today and hasn't told me that everything will be okay or that he's in a better place. She just hugged me and let me cry. Not tears of pain for James, tears of guilt, of shame, of horrible and confusing relief. I can't write more. My hand hurts. Everything hurts. Martha remembered that day with brutal clarity. Eleanor's frantic call at 6 a.m, the taxi ride through the still sleeping city, finding Eleanor sitting on the stairs of her house, still dressed in her pajamas, hugging a confused Sophie who was sucking her thumb. The following entries were short, fragmented. Eleanor processing the funeral, the legal paperwork, the condolence visits that never ended, and in each entry, mentions of Martha. Martha helped me with the paperwork. Martha stayed when everyone left. Martha understands my silence. Until reaching the entry from April 15th, 2010, 3 months after James's death, the day everything changed. It happened. I don't know how to put this into words, but I need to write it before I lose the courage to admit it, even here, in these pages that no one else reads. I kissed Martha, or she kissed me, or we kissed each other. I don't know who started. I only know it happened, and I can't regret it. We were in the courtyard. I was crying again. I don't even know why I was crying anymore. I just know I've been crying for months, and I'm exhausted from pretending I'm okay when I'm not. Martha hugged me like she's done dozens of times. But this time, when I lifted my face, she was looking at me that way. That way that completely disarms me. As if she could see directly inside me, see all the things I'm trying to hide, all the desires I'm trying to deny. And I kissed her. It was soft, careful, terrifying and perfect at the same time, as if everything in my life had been leading me to that exact moment. When we separated, Martha had tears in her eyes. "I've wanted to do that since I met you," she said. And I responded, "Me too." We didn't talk about what it means. We didn't talk about what comes next. We stayed sitting in the courtyard until the sun set, with our hands intertwined, and for the first time in months I felt at peace. Is this wrong? My husband died 3 months ago. I have a 3-year-old daughter sleeping upstairs. I should be in mourning. I should be focused on being a mother. But when I'm with Martha, I don't feel like I'm doing something wrong. I feel like I'm finally being honest. Finally being myself. I don't know what's going to happen. But for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid to find out. Martha had to stop. Tears blurred her vision. She could feel that moment as if it were happening right now. The taste of the kiss, the trembling in Eleanor's hands. The feeling that the world had stopped and nothing else mattered except that connection between them. She continued reading. The following entries documented the beginning of their relationship. The months of mutual discovery, of learning each other's bodies, of building a life together within those 4 walls, while outside the world kept turning, oblivious to their secret happiness. June 8th, 2010. Martha officially moved in today. She brought 3 suitcases and 2 boxes of books. She said she didn't need more, that everything important was here. Sophie adores her. She calls her Aunt Martha. I don't know if it's because she's too small to understand or because in her 3-year-old world, everything is simple and clear. Martha is someone who loves her, so she belongs here. No more questions. I wish adults could see the world with that clarity. Last night, after Sophie fell asleep, Martha and I stayed in the courtyard drinking wine and watching the stars. She asked me if I regretted anything. I told her my only regret was not having met her 10 years earlier. "Then you wouldn't have had Sophie," she pointed out. She's right, and I wouldn't change Sophie for anything. But sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd had the courage to be myself from the beginning. If I hadn't wasted so many years trying to fit into a mold that was never mine. But I'm here now. We have this now. And I'm going to hold on to this with everything I have. Comment what you would do in this situation. The entries continued, documenting 3 years of shared life. Martha read about mornings preparing breakfast together, afternoons reading on the sofa, nights making love after Sophie fell asleep. She read about silly arguments and sweet reconciliations, about future plans and fears. Eleanor kept silent, and then, gradually, the entries began to change tone, to become darker. Eleanor started documenting her concerns. March 3, 2012. Sophie is 5 years old. Yesterday she asked why Martha and I share a room when her friend Lucy says only married people share rooms. I told her adults can share rooms if they want. She seemed satisfied with the answer. For now. But the question kept circling in my head all night. What am I going to tell her when she's older? When the questions are more specific, harder to evade? Martha says we'll tell her the truth. That Sophie deserves to know the truth. That children are more understanding than we think. But Martha doesn't understand what it's like to be a mother in a city like Savannah. She doesn't understand the weight of being different when your daughter has to go to school every day and face children who can be cruel without even understanding why. I heard the mothers at the school door last week, talking about the new teacher who looks very masculine and speculating about her personal life with that mix of curiosity and contempt that turns my stomach. If they talk like that about a stranger, what would they say about me? About us? And what would they say to Sophie? Martha felt a pressure in her chest. Here it was. The beginning of the end. The seeds of doubt that Eleanor had planted and that grew until they choked everything else. The following entries showed Eleanor increasingly anxious. She documented every homophobic comment she heard, every news of discrimination, every story of children suffering bullying for having LGBT parents. She compiled it all like evidence of an imminent danger that only she could see. July 15th, 2012. I had a horrible nightmare. Sophie was 12 years old in the dream. She came home crying because at school they'd called her daughter of dykes. Other kids mocked her, excluded her, made her feel like a freak. And in the dream, she screamed at me, "This is your fault. You chose this. I didn't ask to be different." I woke up sweating, heart racing. Martha slept peacefully beside me. I stayed looking at her for hours, wondering if I'm being selfish, if my happiness is worth the risk of Sophie's happiness. I can't sleep again. It's 4 a.m. and I'm writing this in the kitchen because I need to get it out of my head. What kind of mother puts her own desires above her daughter's well-being? What kind of mother risks her daughter's future for love? Maybe James was right about me. Maybe I'm selfish. Maybe I always have been. The words became more desperate with each entry. Eleanor documented the fights with Martha, the circular conversations that led nowhere, the slow erosion of the happiness they'd built together. November 2nd, 2012. Today is the Day of the Dead. Sophie and I went to the cemetery to visit James's grave. We put chrysanthemum flowers, peach cobbler, his favorite cigars he smoked secretly thinking I didn't notice. Sophie talked to her daddy. She told him about school, her friends, the things she's learning. And then she said, "Aunt Martha is very good to us. I think you'd like her." My heart broke. James never knew Martha. He never knew she existed. And here's his daughter, 5 years after his death, so comfortable with our situation that she assumes her dead daddy would approve. But I'm not comfortable. Every day I'm less comfortable. Tonight, after putting Sophie to bed, I told Martha we need to talk. I told her I have doubts, that I'm afraid, that I don't know if we can continue like this. She got angry. She said I'm letting fear destroy us, that I'm looking for problems where there aren't any, that Sophie is happy, that we're happy, that should be enough. But it's not enough. Not when I think about the future. Not when I see Sophie growing up, and I know the questions will only get more complicated. I don't know what to do. I love Martha with all my being, but I love Sophie more. And if I have to choose between my happiness and hers, I'll always choose hers. Always. Martha had to close the diary. She couldn't keep reading. Not yet. She knew what came next. She knew how this story ended because she'd lived it. She got up from the sofa and walked to the window. Dawn was beginning to light up the sky over Savannah. The city was waking slowly. The distant sound of a dog barking, a car passing on the cobblestone street, the bells of the cathedral calling for the first morning mass. This house was full of ghosts. Not the supernatural kind, but the most painful kind. Memories of a happiness that was real but couldn't last. Every corner held a story. Every object had an emotional weight. Martha thought about selling the house, as had been her original plan. Sign the papers, put up the for sale sign, let some foreign tourist convert it into an Airbnb or an art gallery. But now, with Eleanor's diary in her hands and Sophie's words resonating in her mind, "So you weren't just a visitor. You were her love." That option seemed impossible. She couldn't sell the memories. She couldn't turn their story into a commodity. The sun rose completely, bathing the living room in golden light. Martha made a decision. She didn't know if it was the right one, but she knew it was necessary. She was going to stay. At least for a while. She was going to read the complete diary. She was going to allow herself to feel everything she'd been avoiding for 8 years. And then, maybe, she could finally start to heal. 3 days later, Sophie appeared again at the house door. This time she brought a bigger backpack and a determined expression that reminded her so much of Eleanor that Martha had to look away. "My Aunt Carla knows I'm here," said Sophie by way of greeting, entering without waiting for an invitation. "I told her I was helping the new owner clean Mom's house. Technically, it's not a lie." Martha had spent those 3 days obsessively cleaning. She'd uncovered all the furniture, washed the curtains, mopped the floors. As if by cleaning the dust, she could also clean the pain. It didn't work, but at least the house looked habitable. "Have you read more of the diary?" asked Sophie, leaving her backpack on the sofa. "Everything," Martha responded. "I read it all. Twice." Sophie sat down and waited. She had that patience that shouldn't exist in a 12-year-old girl. A patience probably learned from caring for a sick mother. Martha sat across from her. "Your mom documented everything," she said. "From the day we met to the day I left. And afterwards, too. She kept writing during the 8 years we were apart." "What did she say?" Martha closed her eyes, remembering the entries from those years of separation. Eleanor documenting her life without Martha. The routines with Sophie, school events, birthdays, holidays. And in each entry, always, mentions of regret. Today, Sophie turned 7. We had a party in the garden with her classmates. Piñata, cake, games. She had an amazing time. But the whole time I was thinking, Martha should be here. Martha would have enjoyed this. Martha would have helped with the games, would have sung happy birthday with that charming off-key she has, would have made all the girls laugh with her bad jokes. I had to escape to the bathroom to cry. Sophie shouldn't see me like this on her birthday. I made a mistake. I know it. But I don't know how to undo it. Too much time has passed. Martha probably hates me, and she has every right. She said she made a mistake, said Martha with a broken voice, that she made the wrong decision. That fear made her choose badly. "And what do you think?" asked Sophie. "Do you think she made the wrong decision?" Martha stood up and walked to the bookshelf. She took a photograph she'd been avoiding looking at. It was of the 3 of them, Eleanor, Martha, and Sophie. Sophie was 4 years old in the photo, sitting on Martha's shoulders while Eleanor hugged them both. They were at Forsyth Park on a sunny day, all three smiling, all three happy. "I think Eleanor did what she thought was best for you," Martha finally said. "She was terrified that you'd suffer because of us, that they'd bully you, that they'd reject you, that you'd carry a stigma you hadn't chosen." "But I didn't suffer," said Sophie. "I mean, yes, it was hard not having a dad, but not for the reasons Mom thought. It was hard because Mom was alone, because she carried everything, because she never allowed herself to be happy." Sophie stood up and approached Martha. "There were days when I'd see her staring out the window with such a sad expression. I'd ask her what was wrong, and she'd tell me, 'Nothing, honey, I'm just tired.' But it wasn't tiredness. It was something else. Something deeper." "You were very small," said Martha. "You didn't have to carry that." "But I did," Sophie responded. "Children notice more than adults think. I knew Mom wasn't complete, that she was missing something, someone." Martha placed the photograph back on the bookshelf. "Does your aunt know about Eleanor and me?" Sophie shook her head. "Mom never told anyone in the family. I think my grandmother suspected something, but she never asked directly. In our family, there are many things we don't talk about." "And you?" asked Martha. "How do you feel knowing that your mom, that we—" Sophie looked her directly in the eyes. "Honestly, I feel relieved. I finally understand so many things that never made sense. Why Mom never dated anyone, why this house was so important, why every year in March she insisted on coming to Savannah no matter what." "March?" "Every March," Sophie confirmed. "For as long as I can remember. We'd stay in a hotel near here. Mom would take me to Forsyth Park, to Bonaventure Cemetery, to River Street, all the tourist places. But always, at some point, she'd find an excuse to pass by this street, to see the house. We never went in, just passed by, and she'd stare for a few seconds before continuing to walk." Martha felt something break inside her. "She was looking for me," she whispered. "She came every year hoping to find me here." "I think so," said Sophie. "Or at least hoping to feel close to you, to the memories." They stayed in silence for a moment. Then Sophie took something out of her backpack. Another notebook, thinner than the diary. "There's something else you need to see," she said. "I found it in Mom's things after she died. It's not in the main diary because she wrote it in the last weeks, when she was too sick to write much." She handed the notebook to Martha. It was simple, spiral-bound, the kind you buy at any stationery store. On the cover, in Eleanor's shaky handwriting that barely resembled hers, it said, "For Martha, if they ever find her." Martha opened the notebook with hands that trembled so much she could barely hold it. The first page had only a date, September 2nd, 2023, 2 months before Eleanor died. "Martha, if you're reading this, it means Sophie found the diary. It means you came to the house. It means that somehow, despite all the time and all the pain, the universe gave us one last chance to connect. I don't have much time. The cancer is aggressive, and the doctors have given me weeks, maybe a month. Sophie knows, though she pretends she doesn't. She's brave, my girl, much braver than I was. There are so many things I need to tell you, and so little time. So I'll write them here, hoping that someday they reach you. First, I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for being so afraid. I'm sorry for letting that fear destroy the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm sorry for every day we spent apart. I'm sorry for not having the courage to look for you before it was too late. Second, I never stopped loving you, not a single day in 8 years. I tried. God knows I tried to move on, but you can't forget the person who taught you what it really means to love. You can't forget the one who saw you in your entirety and loved you anyway. Third, and this is most important, you were right about everything. You were right when you said Sophie would be okay. You were right when you said children are more resilient than we think. You were right when you said choosing fear over love is always a mistake. But more than anything, you were right when you said we deserve to fight for what was ours. That love like ours doesn't come twice in a lifetime. That we should hold on to it with everything we had. I let you go because I thought I was protecting Sophie. But all I did was deprive her of a second mother who loved her. Deprive myself of the person I wanted to grow old with. And deprive you of a family that could have been yours. I made the worst mistake of my life by letting you go, Martha. And I've paid for it every day since. Now it's too late for us. But it's not too late for Sophie. She needs to know the truth. She needs to understand that love has many forms, and all are valid. She needs to see that it's possible to be happy, being who you really are. If you're reading this, please, tell her our story. Tell her we were happy. Tell her what we felt was real and beautiful. Tell her my only regret was not having the courage to keep it. And if you can, forgive me. Not for letting you go, because that's unforgivable. But forgive me for not giving you the chance to say goodbye. For not looking for you when I knew I was dying. For being a coward to the end. I loved you more than words can express. I love you still. I'll love you even when I'm no longer here to say it. Yours always, Eleanor P.S. The house is yours. It was always more yours than mine. The best moments of my life happened within these walls, and all were with you. Sell it if you need to close that chapter. Keep it if you want to keep the memories alive. Do what you need to do. I only ask one thing. Don't let it die with dust and silence. This house deserves to remain a home. It deserves to remain a place where love exists without fear. Martha didn't realize she was crying until tears fell on the page, slightly blurring the ink. She closed the notebook carefully and held it against her chest. She loved you so much, said Sophie with a soft voice. Even at the end, when she could barely speak, she said your name. The nurses thought she was delirious, but I knew she wasn't. She was trying to call you. Somehow she was trying to bring you back. Martha was sobbing now, deep sobs that shook her entire body. Sophie approached and hugged her, this 12-year-old girl consoling a broken adult from pain and regret. It's not your fault, Sophie whispered. It's no one's fault. Mom made her decisions. You made yours. The world was different then. Things were harder. But I could have fought more, said Martha between sobs. I could have insisted. I could have looked for her. You could have done 1,000 different things, Sophie interrupted. And Mom could have too, but you didn't. And now you have to live with that. You have to live with that. She separated from the hug and looked Martha in the eyes. But you don't have to live with it alone. I'm here, and although I know I can't replace Mom, I can be part of your life if you want. I can be the bridge between what was and what still can be. Martha looked at her with amazement. Why would you do that? I'm a stranger to you. No, said Sophie firmly. You're not a stranger. You're the person my mom loved more than anyone in the world. You're the person she would have told me about if she'd had the courage. You're part of my story, Martha. And I want to know that part. Something changed in that moment. Something fundamental and important. Martha saw in Sophie's eyes an opportunity. Not to recover what she lost, that was impossible. But maybe to build something new. Something different, but equally valuable. I don't know how to do this, Martha admitted. I don't know how to be whatever I can be for you." "Me neither," said Sophie. "But we can figure it out together, step by step, no pressure, just being present for each other." Martha nodded slowly. "I'd like that." "Me too," Sophie smiled, and for the first time since they met, it was a complete, genuine smile, without the weight of secrets to reveal. They stayed in the living room as the afternoon advanced, sharing stories. Sophie told anecdotes of her childhood with Eleanor. Martha shared memories of the 3 years they lived together. They filled in the blanks in each other's stories, creating a more complete narrative of a woman they'd both loved in different but equally deep ways. "Mom made the world's worst coffee," said Sophie, laughing. "I know," exclaimed Martha. "I told her it was like drinking liquid dirt, but she insisted on making it every morning." "She said it was part of her personality," Sophie remembered, "that she was terrible in the kitchen but insisted on trying." "Her grits were a disaster," Martha added, smiling despite the tears. "Once she made some that were so hard we used them as doorstops." They both laughed, and it was liberating. To be able to laugh at the memories instead of just crying over them. To be able to celebrate who Eleanor had been instead of just lamenting her absence. When the sun began to set, Sophie had to leave. Her aunt was waiting for her for dinner, but before leaving, she stopped at the threshold. "Martha, there's something else Mom left. An envelope. It's addressed to you. I've been carrying it, but I didn't know if I should give it to you or not. But I think it's time." She took a white envelope from her backpack. It was sealed, and on the front, in Eleanor's shaky handwriting, it said, "For Martha. Open it when you're ready." Martha took it with reverence. "Do you know what's inside?" Sophie shook her head. "Mom made me promise I wouldn't open it. She said it was only for you." After Sophie left, Martha stared at the envelope for hours. What more could Eleanor have said? What more did she need to say? Finally, when night had fallen completely over Savannah, Martha opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a key. Not the rusted key to the main house, but a small golden key, the kind that opens safes or special drawers. The note said, "Martha, this key opens the bottom drawer of my desk, the one that was always locked, the one I never let you open because I said it kept boring papers. I lied. It keeps something I want you to have. Something that belongs to you as much as to me. With all my love, E." Martha stared at the golden key for a long time, as if she could decipher its secrets just by observing it. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held it to the lamplight. What had Eleanor kept so carefully? What was so important that it needed a separate key, a secret drawer, a sealed envelope with specific instructions? She approached the dark wood desk in the corner of the living room. She'd seen it 1,000 times, but had never really explored it. It was Eleanor's sacred space, her private refuge where she wrote her academic articles, prepared her classes, read her literature books. Martha had always respected that invisible boundary. The desk had multiple drawers. The ones at the top were full of papers, pens, clips, the normal debris of an intellectual work life. But the bottom drawer, the largest one, had a golden lock that shone even in the dim light. Martha inserted the key. It turned with a soft, mechanical, definitive click. She opened the drawer slowly, almost afraid of what she might find. Inside was a cedarwood box, about the size of a shoebox, but more elegant, with mother-of-pearl inlays that formed floral patterns. Martha recognized it immediately. It was an artisan box they'd seen together at the Forsyth Park Farmers Market during one of their first outings. Eleanor had stared at it for a long time, running her fingers over the inlays with admiration. "It's beautiful," she'd said. "The kind of box where you keep things that matter most." "Do you want me to buy it for you?" Martha had asked. "No," Eleanor had responded with a mysterious smile. "If I ever have it, I want it to be because I deserve it. Because I have something important enough to keep in it." Martha took the box out of the drawer and placed it on the desk. It had no lock, just a simple metal clasp. She opened it carefully, as if inside there were something fragile that could break with a rough movement. The first thing she saw was a photograph. It was the same one she'd been looking at days before, the three of them together at Forsyth Park. But this one wasn't framed or on the bookshelf. This one was loose, a bit worn at the corners from being touched so much. On the back, in Eleanor's handwriting, it said, "My family, the one I chose, April 2011. Under the photograph, there were more things. Martha took them out one by one, each object a direct emotional blow to the heart. A paper napkin from the coffee shop where they'd met for the first time after the market. It had a phone number scribbled on it, Martha's, and a coffee stain. Eleanor had written in the corner, "The day that changed everything." A movie ticket from a film they'd seen together. They didn't remember anything about the movie because they'd spent 2 hours holding hands in the darkness, conscious only of each other's presence. A smooth river stone from the first trip they took together to Tybee Island. They'd spent the day on the beach, swimming in the waves, kissing under the Georgia sun without caring who might see them. A receipt from Leopold's Ice Cream, where Martha bought ice cream every Sunday. Eleanor had kept one from January 2012, 11 months before they separated. On the back, she'd written, "Martha bought butter pecan and pralines and cream. Says ice cream year-round should be legal. I love her even when she says nonsense." Letters. Dozens of letters written on thin paper, some in sealed envelopes, others loose. Martha opened one at random. It was dated June 2015, 3 years after their separation. "Dear Martha, it's your birthday today. You're turning 35. I know this because I've counted every day since the last time we celebrated together. Do you remember that birthday? Sophie and I made you a cake that came out lopsided and horrible, but you insisted it was the best cake you'd ever tasted. I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're still in Charleston or if you moved to another city. I don't know if you're happy. I hope you are. You deserve to be. I'm not happy. I function. I work. I take care of Sophie. I pay the bills. I smile when necessary. But I'm not happy. I write these letters I'll never send because it's the only way I have to keep talking to you, to pretend you're still part of my life. It's pathetic, I know, but it's the only thing I can do. I love you. Still. Always. E." Martha had to stop. Tears were falling on the pages. There were more letters. One for each birthday. One for each anniversary of when they'd met. One for each Christmas. 8 years of unsent letters, of words written in solitude, of love expressed without a receiver. She kept searching in the box. She found a small sketchbook. Martha opened it and was surprised. She didn't know Eleanor drew. The sketches were simple, done in pencil, but they had something moving about them. They were all of everyday moments. Martha reading on the sofa, Martha making coffee, Martha looking out the window, Martha sleeping. On the last page of the sketchbook, Eleanor had written, "I try to draw her from memory, so I don't forget how her hands held a cup, how her shoulders relaxed when she read, how her face looked in the morning before being fully awake. I'm afraid that with the years these details will fade. So I draw them, again and again, my pathetic way of keeping her with me." Subscribe so you don't miss the ending of this story. At the bottom of the box was a larger envelope. It was marked with a single word: plans. Martha opened it and found something she didn't expect. Travel itineraries, printed internet searches, handwritten lists, all related to finding Martha Brennan in Charleston. There were screenshots of Google searches. Martha Brennan Architect, Charleston. Historic Building Restoration, South Carolina. Architects specializing in historic preservation. There was a list of architecture firms in Charleston with phone numbers. Some were crossed out. Others had notes beside them. They don't know her. Said she doesn't work there anymore. Wrong number. There was even a draft email, handwritten as if Eleanor had been practicing before deciding to send it. Dear Martha, I know I have no right to contact you after so long. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know that... The draft ended there. Eleanor had crossed everything out with furious lines and had written beside it, "Coward. You don't even have the courage to send an email." Martha felt something break inside her. Eleanor had tried to find her, not just once, but repeatedly for years. But she'd never managed to find her because Martha had changed her number, had worked as a freelancer under her mother's name, Brennan Clark, had deliberately erased her digital presence because it was too painful to exist in a world where Eleanor could find her, and didn't. She'd hidden herself so well that when Eleanor finally had the courage to look for her, it was impossible. And now, it was too late. Martha closed the box and pressed it against her chest, sobbing. All the rage she'd carried for 8 years, all the conviction that Eleanor had abandoned her without looking back, crumbled. Eleanor had never forgotten her. Eleanor had fought against her own decision every day. Eleanor had tried to correct her mistake, but Martha had made sure to be unreachable. There were no villains in this story. Just two women who loved each other, but had allowed fear and pride to build walls too high to climb. Martha's phone rang, startling her. It was a message from Sophie. "Did you find the drawer? Are you okay?" Martha responded with trembling hands. "Yes, I found everything. I'm not okay, but I think I need to not be okay for a while. I need to feel all of this." Sophie's response came quickly. "It's okay not to be okay. Mom taught me that when she was sick. Sometimes pain is necessary to heal. Do you want me to come tomorrow?" "Yes, please. I'll be there. Rest, Martha, or at least try." Martha went up to the second floor, something she'd avoided doing since that first night. She entered the master bedroom, the one she'd shared with Eleanor. The bed was still made with the same ivory sheets. She lay down on the side that had been hers and looked at the ceiling. She could feel Eleanor there, not literally, not like a ghost, but as a presence built of memories and unresolved love. She could imagine her lying on the other side of the bed, reading with her reading glasses, marking pages of poetry books. "We made so many mistakes," Martha whispered to the empty room. "But I loved you. God, how I loved you. And I'm so sorry we didn't have the courage to fight harder for this." There was no answer. Only the silence of a house that had known love and lost it. But for the first time in 8 years, Martha allowed herself to remember without trying to block the pain. She allowed herself to feel the complete magnitude of what they'd had and what they'd lost. And although it hurt more than words could express, it was also liberating. Because the pain meant it had been real, that it had been worth it, that their love hadn't been a mistake or a phase or something to be ashamed of. It had been the most real and true thing either of them had experienced, and that somehow had to be enough. 3 weeks later, Martha was still in Savannah. She'd called her clients in Charleston, had postponed projects, had vaguely explained that she had personal matters to resolve. No one asked much. People rarely do when you say, "personal matters," with the right tone of voice. Sophie came to visit her almost every day after school. She brought her homework and did it at the kitchen table while Martha worked on small repairs throughout the house. It wasn't a coincidence that Martha had chosen to focus on restoring the house. It was what she knew how to do. Fix broken things, return them to their original beauty. If only broken hearts were as simple to repair as rotten wood or cracked plaster. "My aunt asks about you," said Sophie one Thursday afternoon, nibbling an apple while watching Martha replace a loose floorboard. "What have you told her?" "That you're the new owner of Mom's house, that you let me come to help you clean, that you're kind." Martha put down the hammer and looked at Sophie. "Do you want to tell her the truth?" Sophie considered the question, chewing thoughtfully. "Eventually. But I'm not sure how. Aunt Carla is traditional. I don't know how she'd react to knowing that Mom was in love with a woman." "You don't have to tell her if you don't want to," said Martha. "You don't have to protect me." "I'm not protecting you," Sophie responded. "I'm protecting myself. I'm not ready for that conversation, for all the questions that would come after. To justify something I don't feel needs justification." Martha nodded, understanding perfectly. Eleanor had felt the same. The weight of having to explain, defend, justify a love that should simply be allowed to exist without interrogation. "When you're ready," said Martha. "If you're ever ready. There's no hurry." Sophie smiled gratefully and returned to her math homework. While working on the house, Martha had started finding more fragments of their life with Eleanor. A note hidden inside a book on the bookshelf. "Buy milk and don't forget I love you." An old Patsy Cline CD with a dedication. "For nights when we need to remember that love has always existed, even when the world said it didn't." A photograph stuck behind a frame, the two of them at Forsyth Park Farmers Market, taken by a street photographer. They were laughing with their hands intertwined, surrounded by sunflowers. On the back, Eleanor had written, "Happy, before we were afraid." Each discovery was a small, painful gift. Evidence that their love hadn't existed only in her memory, but had left physical marks in the world. Tangible proof that it had been real. One Saturday morning, Sophie arrived with her Aunt Carla. It was the first time Martha met a member of Eleanor's family. Carla was older than Eleanor by about 10 years, with the same dark hair but already with gray strands, and the same tilt of the head when evaluating a situation. "So, you're Ms. Brennan," said Carla, extending her hand formally. "Sophie has told me you've been very kind letting her come to help with the house." "She's good company," Martha responded, shaking her hand. "And she's helped me a lot to understand the history of the house." Carla looked around the living room with a complicated expression. "Eleanor loved this house," she said softly. "I never understood why. She lived here only a few years, then moved to the north side of the city. But she talked about this house as if it were something sacred." She paused, her eyes stopping at the bookshelf, the green velvet sofa, the dark wood desk. "I always thought it was because she lived here with James before he died, that it was a way of keeping those memories alive. But now," she looked directly at Martha, "now I think maybe there was another reason." Martha's heart beat faster. Did Carla know? Did she suspect? "Houses keep memories," said Carla enigmatically. "And this house has a particular energy. Eleanor was happy here. Genuinely happy. I only saw her like that in this house." Sophie exchanged a look with Martha. "What do you plan to do with the property?" asked Carla. "Sell it?" Martha had been considering that question for weeks. At first, selling had been the obvious plan. Get rid of it, take the money, close that painful chapter. But now, "I'm not sure," Martha admitted. Part of me feels I should sell it and move on, but another part feels it would be betrayal to what this house represents. Carla nodded slowly, as if she understood more than she was saying. My sister left this house in good hands, she finally said. That's all that matters. After Carla left, Sophie dropped onto the sofa with a sigh of relief. I think she suspects something, she said. Me too, Martha responded. But she's not going to press. People of her generation are like that, Sophie explained. They prefer not to officially know what they already unofficially know. It's easier. Martha sat next to her. What about you? How do you feel about all this? We've talked a lot about your mom and about me, but not much about how it affects you. Sophie shrugged, but her eyes revealed she'd thought a lot about this. Honestly, it makes me happy, knowing that Mom had that she experienced that kind of love. She always seemed incomplete, like she was missing something fundamental. And now I know what it was. She paused before continuing. It also makes me sad, because they wasted so much time, because Mom died without resolving this, because you could have been happy if you'd been braver. Your mom was trying to protect you, said Martha softly. I know, Sophie responded, but I didn't need protection from that. I needed to see Mom happy. I needed to grow up understanding that love comes in many forms. I needed to have two people who loved me instead of one person who was slowly dying of loneliness. Her words were mature beyond her years, tempered by the experience of losing a mother too soon. If I could talk to her now, Sophie continued, I'd tell her she made a mistake, that choosing fear is never the right answer, that I would have been okay, better than okay, because I would have learned that being different isn't something to fear. Martha felt tears in her eyes again. It seemed she cried constantly lately. She wanted me to know all this, said Sophie. That's why she left the diary. That's why she gave me instructions to find you. She wanted me to learn from her mistakes, not to repeat her patterns. She turned to Martha with a serious expression. And you? What are you going to do with the lessons from this story? It was a powerful question coming from a 12-year-old girl. Martha thought about the last weeks, about everything she'd read, everything she'd discovered, everything she'd felt. She thought about the cedarwood box full of unsent letters, about the drawings of everyday moments, about the overwhelming evidence of a love that never died, only was silenced by fear. I'm going to stay, she finally said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. At least for a while. I'm going to completely restore this house, return its beauty to it. And then, I don't know, maybe turn it into something. A place where people can come, where stories can be told. Sophie smiled. Mom told me once that this house deserved to remain a home, a place where love exists without fear. She told you that? In her last days, when she could barely speak, she took my hand and whispered, "The house, it must remain a home. Promise me." I promised her, though I didn't understand what she meant then. Martha looked around the living room. The walls needed fresh paint. The floors needed polishing. The windows needed new frames. There was work to do. Months, maybe a year of work. But for the first time in 8 years, she had a purpose that felt right. "You know what?" said Martha suddenly. "I'm going to need help designing the restoration. Would you like to be my consultant? You know, perspective from someone who really knew this house when it was alive." Sophie's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Really. I'll pay in pizza and American history. I can also teach you something about architecture if you're interested." "I'd love to," said Sophie. and hugged her impulsively. It was in that hug that Martha realized something important. She hadn't completely lost Eleanor. Part of her lived in Sophie, in her bravery, her honesty, her capacity for love. And maybe, just maybe, Martha could be part of this girl's life who was Eleanor's last gift. The following months were transformative. Martha immersed herself in the restoration work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every board she replaced, every wall she painted, every detail she restored was an act of love. Not just for the house, but for what it represented. Sophie came religiously after school. Martha taught her about colonial architecture, about restoration techniques, about how to read the bones of a building to understand its history. Sophie absorbed everything like a sponge, asking intelligent questions, offering perspectives Martha hadn't considered. One afternoon, while they worked together sanding an exposed wooden beam, Sophie asked, "Do you believe in destiny?" Martha considered the question. "I'm not sure. Why?" "Because I think about all the things that had to happen for us to be here now. Mom had to meet you. You had to fall in love. You had to separate. Mom had to get sick. She had to leave the diary and instructions. You had to come to sell the house just when I was ready to look for answers." Sophie stopped sanding and looked at Martha. "It seems like too much coincidence. Like something bigger was guiding us toward this moment." Martha smiled. "Or maybe it's just that love has a way of finding paths, even when we think it's dead and buried. Maybe your mom's love for me, and my love for her, was so strong it created its own gravity. That pulled us back to each other, even after death." "That's beautiful," said Sophie. "Mom would have said something like that. She was romantic that way." "Aren't you romantic?" "I don't know yet," Sophie admitted. "I'm 12. I'm just discovering who I am. But thanks to Mom's story, at least I know I have options. That I don't have to follow a predetermined script." It was exactly the kind of lesson Eleanor would have wanted her daughter to learn. By spring, the house was almost completely restored. Martha had kept all the original structure, but had updated the essential systems. The walls shone with fresh paint in the same colors Eleanor had chosen years ago. The terracotta tile floors had been polished until they gleamed. The windows had been repaired, and now let in light at perfect angles. The back courtyard had been transformed. Martha had repaired the fountain, and now water flowed again, creating a soft, constant sound. She'd planted new wisteria that were already starting to climb the walls. The wrought iron chairs had been restored and painted. It was the same house, but renewed, honoring its past while embracing its future. On a Saturday in April, exactly 1 year after Martha arrived in Savannah, they organized a small ceremony. Just Martha, Sophie, and surprisingly, Aunt Carla, who had insisted on coming. They planted a magnolia tree in the courtyard. In the south, magnolias bloom with spectacular white flowers every spring, filling the air with their sweet fragrance. "For Eleanor," said Martha, as they placed the young tree in its hole, "who loved this house, who loved deeply even when she was afraid, who gave us this opportunity to heal." "For Mom," Sophie added, putting dirt around the roots, "who was brave in the ways she could be, who taught us about love even in her absence." Carla, who had been silent all morning, finally spoke. "For my sister Eleanor," she said with a trembling voice, "who deserved to be happy, who found love in unexpected places, and who, although she made mistakes, always loved with all her heart." She looked directly at Martha as she said this, and in her eyes there was understanding. Maybe not complete understanding, maybe not acceptance without reservations, but recognition. Recognition that something important had existed between her sister and this woman, something that deserved to be honored. After planting the tree, Carla approached Martha. "Sophie told me," she said simply, "about you and Eleanor." Martha felt her stomach contract. How would Carla react? With rejection? With anger? "I'm sorry I didn't know when Eleanor was alive," Carla continued. "I'm sorry my sister felt she had to hide something so important. I'm sorry the world is so complicated that love has to hide." There were tears in her eyes. "But I want you to know I'm glad Eleanor had that she had you, that she experienced that kind of love, even if it was for a short time." She extended her hand, and Martha took it, squeezing it gratefully. "Thank you," Martha whispered. "You don't know how much that means." "I know Sophie comes here a lot," said Carla, "and I want you to know you have my blessing. You are good for her. You give her something I can't, a connection with her mother. With that part of her mother, the rest of us never really knew." It was a moment of unexpected grace, an opening in a world that often feels closed to stories like Eleanor and Martha's. Give it a like if this story touched your heart. That night, after everyone left, Martha sat alone in the courtyard. The fountain bubbled softly. The magnolia tree swayed in the night breeze. The stars shone over Savannah, the same stars she and Eleanor had watched together so many nights years ago. She took out Eleanor's diary, which she now read occasionally in moments like this. She opened it to one of the last entries, written only weeks before her death. "If I could go back, I'd do so many things differently. But above all, I would have been braver. I would have chosen love over fear. I would have trusted that Sophie would be okay. Because children raised with love are always okay, no matter what that love looks like. But I can't go back. I can only leave this here, these words, these truths, hoping that someone reads them and learns from my mistakes. To whoever finds this, love is rare. True love is even rarer. When you find it, don't let it go. No matter what obstacles you face, what society says, what fears you have, fight for it. Because losing it, choosing not to have it out of fear, is a pain that never completely heals. Choosing fear is choosing to live only halfway. And life is too short, too precious, to live it halfway. Martha closed the diary gently. Eleanor was right. About everything. She looked at the house, now completely restored, shining under the moonlight. It wasn't just a structure of brick and wood, it was a testament. A reminder that love existed here once, deeply and truly. And that love, though it had faced its end, had left something beautiful behind. Martha had made a decision in recent weeks. She wouldn't sell the house. Instead, she'd turn it into something new but connected to its past. A community space. A place where young LGBT people could gather, feel safe, share their stories. A place that would honor Eleanor and Martha's love by creating space for other loves to flourish without fear. She'd already started making contacts in Savannah's LGBT community. She'd talked with local organizations. The support had been overwhelming. Everyone understood the importance of having safe spaces, especially in a city that, although beautiful and culturally rich, still had its struggles with acceptance. Sophie had been her biggest cheerleader in this. "It's perfect," she'd said when Martha shared the idea. "It's exactly what Mom would have wanted, for this house, where she found love, to help others find theirs too." Martha stood up and walked toward the house. At the threshold, she stopped and looked back at the courtyard. For a moment, she could almost see Eleanor there, sitting in one of the wrought iron chairs, with a book in her lap, smiling with that smile that made everything else stop mattering. "Thank you," Martha whispered to the night air. "For loving me, for letting me in, for these memories, and for Sophie. For giving me a second chance to be part of something beautiful. There was no answer. Only the sound of the fountain, the whisper of wind through the wisteria, and the quiet heartbeat of a sleeping city. But Martha felt something anyway. A sense of peace, of closure, of mutual understanding that transcended words and time, and even death. She entered the house and climbed the stairs to the bedroom. She no longer avoided that space. She'd reclaimed it, made it hers again while honoring what it had been. She lay down on the bed, on the side that had always been hers, and closed her eyes. For the first time in 8 years, she fell asleep without nightmares, without regrets that woke her at 3 a.m, without the constant weight of what could have been, just peace and gratitude, and the certainty that, though her story with Eleanor had ended, something new and beautiful was beginning. In the courtyard, the young magnolia tree swayed gently in the breeze, its roots sinking deep into Savannah's earth, preparing to bloom in future springs with spectacular white flowers. And the house, that historic house that had seen so much love and so much pain, finally rested. Not as a mausoleum of dead memories, but as a living space, breathing, ready for its next chapter. Ready to be, once again, a home where love exists without fear. A year later, the Purple House, as it was now called in honor of the wisteria and the future bloom of the magnolia, officially opened its doors as an LGBT community center. The opening ceremony was small but significant. Sophie, now 13, cut the ribbon alongside Martha. It had been her idea to name the center in honor of Eleanor in a subtle way. A plaque at the entrance said, "In memory of those who loved bravely in difficult times." Carla was there, and surprisingly, she'd brought other members of Eleanor's family. Cousins, uncles, friends from university. Not everyone completely understood what the place represented, but everyone recognized it was important. That Eleanor would have wanted this. "My sister would have been proud," Carla told Martha during the reception. "Scared probably, but proud." Martha laughed. "Yes, that sounds like Eleanor." The center offered multiple services: a safe space for LGBT youth meetings, a library with inclusive literature, workshops on rights and acceptance, and support sessions for families navigating these complex conversations. But more than that, it was simply a place where people could be themselves, where love in all its forms was celebrated without questions, without judgments, without fear. Martha had left her job in Charleston and had moved permanently to Savannah. She ran the center with help from local volunteers, many of them young LGBT people who had found in the Purple House the home they'd never had. Sophie was practically her unofficial co-director. She came after school every day, helped with events, had become a mentor to younger kids who were discovering their identity. She was brave in ways neither Eleanor nor Martha had been able to be at her age. One afternoon in March, the month when everything had begun years ago, Martha was in the courtyard when Sophie arrived with an excited expression. "Look!" she exclaimed, pointing toward the magnolia tree. Martha looked and felt her heart expand. The tree, for the first time since they'd planted it, had buds. Small, barely visible, but unmistakably there. By next month, it would be covered in white flowers. "Mom would have loved this," said Sophie softly, linking her arm with Martha's. "All of this. The center. The tree. Us." "Yes," Martha agreed. Yes, she would have. They stood there, looking at the young tree that would soon bloom, in the house that had known love and loss, but now knew hope and new beginnings. And somewhere, in the memories that floated between those brick walls, in the pages of a diary full of words of love, in the legacy left for a brave daughter, Eleanor smiled. Because her story, though it had ended in pain, had planted seeds of something beautiful. Something that would grow and bloom and help others find the courage she couldn't gather in time. And that, finally, was enough. That was everything. This story has shown you that true love never dies. It only transforms. If it touched your heart, subscribe to our channel. Here we share real stories of real people, stories that matter, stories that change perspectives. Don't let the algorithm make you miss the next ones. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and share this story with someone who needs to remember that love, in all its forms, deserves to be celebrated. See you in the next story.